Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hello, welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Lilli Bewley. I hope I said that right. People know me for not getting the names right. Lilli is a dating coach for finding love with over 10 years of experience in personal development. She herself went from just surviving in life to thriving in love and purpose. Isn't that beautiful? Currently, she is helping single and successful women love dating and finding true love. Lilli is on a mission to educate people on how dating can be fun again after a divorce, even in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and even if they've been single forever. We have the ability to create magnetic energy in our dating lives, even if we have to perform and be high achievers in other parts of our lives. Her signature quiz, the Feminine Dating Archetype Quiz, will show women their blocks to love and help them find their true love match. So thank you, Lilli, for being here today.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so excited to drop in with you and have this conversation with you today.
Awesome. So let's get to it. I know we both have very busy schedules today, so we're going to be succinct and to the point as much as we can.
It's my favorite.
So as you are likely aware, my audience is women who have survived various types of traumas. Do you have a short trauma story that you could share with us? Have you been impacted by trauma?
Oh, yes. I have been impacted by trauma that I've inflicted on myself in some ways. And then trauma that, that have been in relations with other people, especially my family of origin, my childhood, and through a lot of my relationships, my romantic relationships through the years as well. Thankfully, not the beautiful man that I'm with right now, but definitely the man before him and the man before him. I think the thing that really, the connection I've discovered about this work and about telling my story and about the work that I do with a lot of women. I work with men one-on-one as well, but I work mostly with women. Is I was born with this great big heart, this big heart. I was born with this big heart, and I'm, at my core, I'm loving, I'm caring, and I'm kind. And through the traumas that I experienced, especially, in childhood and my family of origin, I think my ACE score is like an 8, that type of thing. I'm sure your audience knows what an ACE score is, right? I'm assuming.
Likely so, but it would be great if you give a 2-minute explanation just in case.
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert on this. I didn't come up with this rubric, but ACE is adverse childhood experiences. You can Google it. But it's essentially it's a kind of a little bit of a quiz, an eye opener, if you must put it that way, about the environment that you grew up in as a child. And the higher the ACE score, essentially the more trauma that you experience. So it's anywhere from had a parent that was in jail or incarcerated, was frequently physically or sexually abused, those types of things. I don't have it in front of me, but so the highest score is 10. So it's safe to say that the environment that I grew up in was not safe at all for a child or for anyone for that matter. But what I've realized through my healing journey is that I had this beautiful open heart, right? And obviously I survived. I'm here. Now I'm thriving. I've gotten through a lot of the final kind of patterns that I was seeing in relationship and in myself and my nervous system, all of the things. I'm not the end of the road by any means, but I'm continuing to walk down this healing path. But what I realized with all the trauma is that it never gave me the ability to listen to myself, to listen to my intuition, to listen to what was right for me, especially when it came to relationships. So what happened throughout the years and throughout my development was that anyone that came to me whether that be men, whether that be jobs, whether that be friends, I kind of just let them in to my heart without knowing if they really should be there. Like I didn't really gain the skills of discernment, of intuition, of saying yes and saying no, because of the environment that I grew up in. Like I said, I was really just in survival mode. So there's no way for me to learn who I was, learn how to listen to my intuition. And that carried on through adulthood until I started to do my healing work and really start to tune into myself and my body and my intuition. So that's kind of how I connect what I've been through to today.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. We always have our intuition, but as survivors, we learn early, we get the message like that what we want, what we need is not going to happen, and it's not okay, because that's what we see in childhood. And we just carry that forth until we stop and really tune into that intuition, like you said. How did you know, when and how did you know to do that? Like, what was extra healing for you as you were recovering?
I don't know about extra healing, but I like to tell this story, kind of my dark night of the soul, really. Like my breaking point was I was in like my late 20s, early 30s, and I had done everything that society had told me and my parents had told me to do to be happy. Everything, I had my master's degree. I was making six figures. I had the job. My resume was banging. I had the car. I had the house. I had even the boyfriend, right? And I was living with him at the time. And I was so the outward projection of myself to the outside and what was really happening inside of me was a stark contrast. I was really dying inside. I kept it together, obviously, and was bubbly and all of that stuff, but I was really just like really going down the road of emotional and physical and spiritual death. So much so that it came to a head one evening. I was with my boyfriend and we got into a fight. And I remember going into my room or our room and sitting on the bed and really just crying my eyes out because I didn't understand. I was so confused and so frustrated because, again, like I had done all the steps. Like I was an action taker, I'm an A+ student. I'm a go-getter, I'm an independent boss bitch, whatever it is that society has rewarded me for decades. I was that woman. And it came to a head that night, and, trigger warning, everyone. I was so unhappy. I was so distraught and so confused. I was just crying on the bed, bawling. That's a thought popped in my head. The first suicidal ideation that I'd ever had, that a gun was in the drawer next to me. And so I pulled out, opened the drawer. I pulled out the gun. I picked it up. I remember how it felt. I always get emotional when I talk about this, but it was heavy and it was cold. And this answer was an answer again that had never really popped into my sphere. And so I held it, for a minute. And then all of a sudden I got this metaphorical tap on the shoulder. And I always like to say that this was a higher self that I hadn't met, or it had been buried within me for decades. But I always like to say my higher self and God, I say God, you can say whatever word that you want, conspired to show me that there was a better way. And so that was the day that I had to believe in something other than what was in front of me, what I knew, what my parents were giving me an example of. And that was the day that I guess, you're asking kind of a monumental healing. That was also very, very healing because it was my first really deep connection with myself. And from that point on, I started to learn. I started to put myself in therapy. I didn't even know about books about codependency. I didn't even know about podcasts. I didn't know that there was a whole different world available to me until that day.
Ooh, Lilli, I really appreciate you sharing that vulnerable story, because somebody today needed to hear that. And it's real. You could have easily just skipped over it and the podcast would have been missing something, the episode. So I think that's huge. Anytime I get tapped by God, I think that's a pretty big deal. So
Yeah, for real.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And how did that, or how did your healing recovery lead you to your current work? Because I'm guessing you didn't do this work before, or were you doing it before?
No, my previous time in the work world was I worked for sports and entertainment companies. And again, like great resume, doing the thing. And about, I've been in the development space for a while, but didn't really start until that night. I remember it was 2017. I remember it's October 17th was my birthday, 2017. And so I started again, like reading into podcasts or reading in books, really just started to learn. 2018 is when I started my podcast. So I also have a podcast. It's called the Lilli Bewley podcast. So 2018 was the day or the year that I started my podcast. And there was a drive in me because again, if you could imagine like walking down a hallway with no doors, right? A dark, dingy hallway with no doors. And all of a sudden there's a door to the right or whatever in front of you. That's a big bright light. Like that's how I felt. I didn't even know a door existed. And so there was a deep need inside of me to talk about the things that I was learning. And so that's where all of this started. And what's really funny, and of course, this probably isn't funny to you, Karen, but this is how the healing work goes. Sometimes healing is such a contrast to the stuff that you experienced, or it always is actually a contrast to the stuff that's really painful for you or what you experienced time and time again, in your childhood, for example. So in my childhood, it was not valued. My voice was not valued. I didn't have the ability to speak up. I didn't have the ability to create my own opinions. I didn't have the ability I'm getting the chills. I didn't have the ability to be authentic. I didn't have the ability to talk about the real shit that was happening in my life, right? Like the real stuff. And this again, like I have this new kind of awakening, and I started this podcast, and the action of doing the podcast was a complete contrast to the environment that I grew up in, which is a very hard yet healing experience. And so I've had my podcast since then. And how I arrived today, I work with dating and relationships, women who want to find love, who want epic love, who have probably failed in the past. Because what I started to realize in my journey was like, I got to this point where I kind of knew everything. Like I knew my attachment style. I knew I could probably diagnose myself. I could probably diagnose my partner, but the pattern was still repeating. The pattern of when I was dating was I was still attracting unavailable men. I was still frustrated. I was still confused. I always say, like sacrifice my body, like have sex with them when maybe I really shouldn't have, because it wasn't self-honoring to me. No dig on whoever's listening to this, but this is my story. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really, really started to dig deep into this work and how I could help people, is because patterns are something that happens 3 or more times. And there's always a root cause to behaviors and actions that are happening. We know this, right? Like there's always a root cause that is happening and dictating our behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs. And so that's how I got into this work, is really based off of the healing and work that I did myself. And a lot of women that I attract are like me. The Feminine Dating Archetypes, which is one of my things. It's so much fun. Was actually a download from God about like my experience and the experience that other clients were having. So it's like, I don't know. It's just so beautiful. I'm just so really like grateful to be here and do this.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you attract a lot of women who've been unlucky in love, probably toxic relationships in their past, history of abuse as well. And so you're able to help them because of your personal and professional experience at this point.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really those women who have tried everything on their own. I'm sure that it might be very similar with you, Karen, but you have tried everything on their own. They've listened to the podcast, they've read the books, and maybe even, have had other coaches or other therapists that really haven't been able to get kind of to that root. I'm not saying I can do that 100% of the time, but I definitely help heal like the deeper layers that are in there. It's just I don't know, it's just my gift. But yeah, and those women who really want to stop repeating those patterns, but are really, they want epic love and magnetic love.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. What a service you offer. My epic love happened very interesting. I kissed a lot of frogs first, married a few of them. And then my download from God is like, you teach people this all the time. The red, the yellow, the green flags. So I dug out the book I recommend everybody else. It's Relationships for Dummies, I think.
Okay.
It talks about their flags. And I just made a list. Okay, this is what's not worked for me. Red flags. These are possible yellow flags. And here's my green flags. And then I met my husband on Match.com. And because of my flag system and deciding not to date anyone that did not honor or fit into those, no matter how attractive they were, no matter how funny, whatever, like they had to, it was the first time I actually used my brain and not just my heart. Like we're taught as young girls, like you follow your heart and whoever you love, you should marry. And that was not working for me because I could love very easily all the wrong people. And so when I followed the system, that's how I met my husband. We met on Match.com and we were a 98% match. And he's amazing.
I love that. I love that so much. You know, I think
11 years now.
Oh, it's so good. I think you bring up like a good point, right? And what I heard you say is that you were, you know, you're kind of actively doing this work. And I don't know if it was the same for you, Karen, but I also did the same, but it was still really, really hard for me to like follow through, to stay with my boundaries because of that patterning, you know, that we've had probably for decades. What I always like to say is that if someone is seeing, you know, unhealthy patterns in their dating life or even in their relationship or whatever, I think what the good news is that your patterns aren't you. They're really just parts of you that are really just begging to be healed. So I always like to say that because a lot of times people, you know, we don't do this consciously, but subconsciously we make meaning, you know, of our patterns. Like I'm unlovable. There's no hope. I mean, one of the last things I had to heal, and, you know, I welcomed in my epic love about a year ago, the most amazing man I've ever met in my life, which is insane. And my parts of me still are like, is this real? I don't know. I don't believe it yet, you know, and it's going to take probably a while for that to happen, but it's really just parts of us that are kind of just speaking up and being like, hey, Lilli, hey, Karen, like, let's, you know, it's time to heal them. Right. And yeah. And so, yeah,
it's knowing our worth, isn't it?
It is. I think that the biggest act of self-love is one of the biggest acts of self-love, and I follow by this rule myself, is to put ourselves in situations like healing containers, coaching, therapy with you, with me, with other people that feel not totally scary, but maybe just a little bit scary. Like maybe just a little bit scary. And I feel like that's my North Star, you know, for things, how I make decisions about, you know, things for myself, like healing things for myself.
Yeah, I call that stretching just a little bit out of your comfort zone. And that's how I describe therapy a lot. It's doing that stretch. Like if therapy is super easy, it may not be healing. Like it's got to feel like a stretch. You got to grow and try. And it is scary, like you said, but that's where the courage comes in and healing comes in. So for anyone listening that really feels your heart, your healing heart and energy, and they want to work with you, Lilli, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Thank you. Well, thank you for this time. You're amazing. So a few things. Like I said, I have the Feminine Dating Archetype Quiz, which is my signature quiz. It's this whole collaboration between the universe and my experience, and then also all the hundreds of coaching hours with my clients. And it'll show you your blocks to love, and it'll help you find your true love match. And that's at datingarchetype.com. I also have an offer for your listeners. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have one of my programs is called Dating You. It's the School for Magnetic Relationships. And that's where we go into the deeper level root cause patterns. Last month, we worked on forgiveness. We're on Forgiveness 102, but it's a subscription-based program with a lot of community support and coaching support from myself and my team. I have a code that's Karen for 2 months free for your listeners. So if they want to come in and try it out, I'd love to have them and just kind of check around and see if it's right for them. But it's really for those women who are just kind of ready for something better. Honestly. So yeah, I'd love to have anyone in if you would like to send them my way.
Beautiful. Would love to do that. So listeners, that will be in the show notes. If you're driving, don't crash the car.
Yeah.
Trying to get the info down. It'll be in the show notes, the code and everything. Lilli, thank you so much for being here today. I suspect we could have talked for a couple of hours. I know I have more questions, but that's okay. We can always keep in touch over email, and I can share in your show notes anything amazing. Oh, well, let me ask one more thing, though. Like,
Sure.
Have you written a book? You going to write a book? I think you should write a book. Anyway.
Oh, that whole thing. There are a few in the works, but I have a workbook out on Amazon that I don't really plug that much because it's before I really got into dating, but it's Heal Your Anxiety and Receive Limitless Love. And that was like a little workbook I put out, but I'm working on the big stuff. Well,
keep us posted so we can add it to the show notes later.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.